guys, and I'm so happy to have you here with me today again. I hope you are well. As I said last time, today we're going to continue to talk about forgiveness. Last time we talked about what is forgiveness, what does it mean, and we talked about the two important elements. Remember, if not, check the link down below because I'm going to leave you with the first and second episode. This series of 10 episodes, which I don't have a name for yet. I'm still thinking, we shall see how we call it. But today we're going to talk about what is not forgiveness. Majority of us have a problem with forgiveness because we don't understand the second part of what forgiveness does not involve. We think if we forgive, that means we have to go back into the toxic, abusive relationship, and we don't want that. If we forgive, we believe many times that if we forgive, that means I can just excuse the person, we just move on. That's not what forgiveness is. And from the beginning, I want to say that forgiveness does not mean the restoration of the relationship. When we're talking about restoration of a relationship, we're talking about two parts that together agree on something, prove faithful, and they build and they walk this whole process. And then, there can be restoration, but forgiveness does not mean that it's not equal restoration. When it comes to people, we don't have magical formulas. When we're talking about people, we can't use maths because in maths, 1 + 1 makes 2. I was about to say makes 1. 1 + 1 makes 2. But when it comes to people, every person is so unique. Every situation is so unique. Every season is so unique that you can't just say do 1 to 3 and you reach to 4, 5, 6. It doesn't work that way. I love self-help books, which helps you in making yourself a better person, in being more disciplined, in being more efficient with your time. And I used to read a lot of self-help books, and I agree with them. But when it comes to matters of the heart, those 1, 2, 3 steps don't necessarily work anymore. Not in the same way, let's say. And we're going to see. But even if there are no magical formulas, there are people out there, counselors, that can help you navigate this process of forgiveness, of healing. And what I have here, let me see, I don't know if you can see maybe something here moving. It's a puzzle piece. I don't have a bigger one because we gave away all the babies puzzles, which have very big pieces. And this is from a 5,500 pieces puzzle. But what I have here is a puzzle piece. And what happens is when we are in a situation that we got really, really hurt, or we are in a very abusive, toxic relationship, which I was in, that was my case, what happens, we tend to be so close to the situation, is as if this puzzle piece gets really right in front of my eyes, and if I try to focus on it, everything gets blurry behind. I'm crossing my eyes, I don't know if that can be seen on the camera, but basically it's like I almost can't see, like it's really just distorting my vision. So what a counselor does, that's why counselors are very important, Christian good counselors are very important, is because what they help you is they help you move this piece a bit away from your eyes. And the moment it gets like, it's here really because I can't see anything, then it gets further, I can start seeing a bit of color. I can see there's something happening in there, but then when it gets to here, and probably if you're having a worse vision, when you get to there, I'm starting to see the details. I'm starting to see that there's a bit of red in here, there's a bit of yellow there, a bit of purple, a bit something that resembles hair, and some white lines. All of a sudden, I have a different perspective. It's like, and then when you put this puzzle against the image on the box, on the front image that you get when you get a puzzle, it's like, maybe it makes a little bit more sense. And basically what a good counselor does, it does not make you dependable. Because there's also this trend, not so much in Romania, but I know in America, where every week you have to go to therapy. I have an issue with that because a good therapist, a good counselor helps you navigate a season. You might need them for a season, and that's fine. You might need them for 2 seasons of your life, and that's okay, depending how much baggage you have there to sort, depending how many puzzle pieces you have right in front of your eyes. But they should help you walk the process, figure it out, and then give you the tools so you can do it by yourself. But anyways, what a good counselor does, yeah? When I'm talking about Christian counselors, it's important because we are talking about forgiveness from a Christian point of view and restoration from a Christian point of view. And it matters. The fact that Christ is in the equation makes the whole difference, yeah? So a good counselor is like, it helps you figure out where this puzzle piece goes. You're doing it yourself, really, but it's just kind of helping you navigate. As I said, there's no magical formulas. There's no journey. There's no healing journey. There's no story that is identical with another one. Each person is unique. Each situation is unique. Each story is unique. But there are a few common grounds, let's say, steps that every situation has to go through when we're talking about healing now and restoration, right? So let's keep talking about the puzzle. Generally, we love puzzles as a family, and what we tend to do, which probably you do the same, majority of the people do the same things. When they get a puzzle, they get the pieces out, and then you start sorting them and putting them face up because they come all mixed. So instead of the gray part being up like it is now, I just flip it over so it's side up. And then the next step, so this is like one of the first steps we do when you open a new puzzle. Then the next step, which majority of the people do, they look for the margins, and put all the pieces with the margins on a side. Is the same. You need to flip, the side to forgive. Then you're sorting the margins, you're sorting out and deciding that forgiveness is also a process, what we talked last time about, And then you start making the margin. Some people might start there, some people might start there, some might start here. So this is a little bit unique to each person individually. And then you get to the middle part, which is completely unique. And actually, even for you, if you do that puzzle multiple times, every time you're going to have probably almost a different strategy. You might start with the red colors this time, but next time you might start with the corner that has more blue. It's not necessarily identical every time. It's the same with every healing process, every healing journey, every story of restoration. But what a counselor does, it helps you figure these things out. It helps you navigate. It helps you remove the pieces from right in front of your eyes when that's all you can see, and everything else is very blurry, to actually putting it in focus so that you can see and figure out more or less where it should go. What happens to the relationship? All these questions. Okay, I forgave, but do I get restoration now? Do I just move on? It doesn't matter how your situation would look. One thing is for sure. You will need boundaries. Now, when it comes to my case, obviously, I do not have a relationship with the people that abused me, with the man that abused me. But I do have diplomacy because I decided that that's okay. I can give that. Because of the grace of God and the process He did in my heart, I can give that. Which means what? Because I grew up in a village, obviously, most of the times when I go to my parents, I face those two men. Just out of coincidence. We are in the same village, in a very small village. So you're bound to meet people, I have no issue with that. I can say hello. I can say, how are you? If we're in a church, I have no problem that they are there. I have no problem praying for them. I have no problem having a coffee. Let's say if we're in a church setting and we're having a meal, I have no issues that they are there. I forgave and I walk the process of forgiveness, and because of God's grace in my heart and what He did and He transformed in my heart, I'm okay with that. But that doesn't mean we're gonna chit-chat and share heart or life issues or things that are happening. No, just hi, how are you, and move on. Because I decided that's the process I can and the limit that I want to have in the relationship with them. If we can call it a relationship, I know that your story might look different because it might be a husband and wife, a mom or a dad, it might be a grandparent, it might be an auntie or an uncle, it might be a brother or a sister, a pastor, a teacher, which doesn't necessarily involve that you can physically just say hello and move on. But no matter how, you do need boundaries. When I talk about boundaries, every relationship needs boundaries. And boundaries, not walls. It took me a long time. Yeah, wall. This is a wall. I know my accent might be a bit funny. I remember in 2009, the crossing of the year, one of my points of resolution, I used to do a resolution every New Year's Eve. I don't do that anymore in the same way. Those days I used to write, for the next year, I want to read my Bible every day. I want to pray every day, so and so minutes. I want to read, I don't know how many books. I'm in a different season now. Kind of these things are kind of coming naturally, so I don't need to write them down anymore. But they were good for that time. But one point, I actually wrote it down on my paper. One of my resolution point was not let anybody get close to me and not to open my heart to anybody. These are not boundaries. These are walls. There are walls that are closing you in a prison. Boundaries. They show us where I start, where I begin, where you start, where you begin. It shows us what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And actually listened to a book not too long ago, this year. And I do 100% recommend it. I bought it as an audiobook because I just didn't have the time to sit down and listen and read. It's called Good Boundaries and Goodbye by Lisa Turker. And in it, she talks about this concept of responsibility and access. And she gives this example, and I'm going to give you now. Now, imagine you open a bank account. At least in Romania, most of the times when you open a bank account, they give you a card as well. But even if you don't have a card, you do have a PIN. They give you a password, something that only you can have access to. Would you post your password or your PIN, however you want to call it, on social media? No. Would you give it to your friends? Most probably not. Would you give it to your neighbors? Most probably not. Would you give it to your mom and dad? I suppose it depends on the situation, how old you are, and why would you give them the password. But you would be very careful with the people that would have access to that information. Why? Because you don't have the faith, you don't trust that they will be responsible enough with the information you gave them. Why are we so careless when it comes to relationship? The friend from my teenagerhood, yeah, the one that abused. There was a lot of emotional abuse in that relationship, and psychological abuse. But I gave him access, 100%, without even questioning. I didn't know about it, but I just gave him the access, and he did not prove responsible with the level of access I gave him. So you might give some people 3% access because that's how much responsible they can be in the relationship with you. You can give them 50% or maybe 70% or even 100%, but that's because they are responsible with the access that they were given. The Bible says, guard your heart. I don't know how the verse, I have the Romanian version right now in my head, but basically it says, guard your heart very watchfully and carefully, because out of the heart comes comes life, basically, the springs of life. Guard your heart, guys. Take care of your heart. But we're talking about the heart, the essence of a person. That's what a heart is the essence of a person. And actually, up to this season of my life, before I used to be always like, you have to do this, no matter how you feel. And it was a good season. I had to learn that in that season. But now I'm used to a season when I'm like, actually, the heart matters. Because, when Samuel went to anoint David as king, and he was surprised that God chose David, but God was telling Samuel, guys, you look at what you see with your eyes. I look at something beyond. I look at the heart. I look at the essence of the person. That matters a lot to God. What happens in here, more than what you're doing as an action. Yeah, there's a season when you have to do it no matter how you feel. But it's important what is happening in here, because that talks about where you are in your relationship with God. It talks about where you are as a person, your character. Guard your hearts, guys. Don't give access to just anybody. I make myself vulnerable quite easily, and I'm very open to be open. And I'm okay with that. And actually, I had a friend once. I mean, we just got to know, I got to know her, and I went out for a coffee, and we were just sharing about life. And I was just sharing different things, about when we didn't have money and that. And she was like, are you so open with everybody? Like, I think she was expecting me to put this mask of perfection. Everything is good, everything is pink, and life is all in pink. But I chose to be real, and I'm okay. I can be transparent in that sense. I love to be authentic. And that's one of my goals in life. To be authentic, to be the same person online and offline. To be the same person that I preach as what my kids and my husband see at home. To be the same, to just be authentic. But still, there are people that have a lot of access to my heart, and there are people that have none or very little access to my heart. For example, obviously, Jesus has 100% access, but after that, there's Sam, my husband, who has 100% access to my heart. I share with him my dreams, my visions, my desires. I share with him my doubts, my prayers, my fears. I share a lot of these things with him. And then there are some other people out of my marriage that have access because they proved responsible. For example, my brother Danny and his wife Sarah, they have quite a bit of access to my heart. Many times I just call my brother, or he calls me, and we're like, how are you doing? And I share things with him that I don't share with other people. My struggles, my doubts, yeah? And then I have a handful of women that I share stuff with that are more personal, more from access to my heart. But that doesn't mean everybody has the same access. Even if I'm transparent and I can talk about things, there are some things that are kept to talk just with some people that prove responsible with the access I gave them. Do you know that God has limits as well? I mean, I love the Old Testament, and I say that over and over again. I love the New Testament. I love it because it shows me how to be like Christ, how to follow Christ. But I find such a beauty and such richness in the Old Testament. If you read the Old Testament, you realize that God has limits. Not because he's mean, but because he loves us. And talking about responsibility and access and boundaries, if you remember in Exodus, when the people of God, when Israel got out of Egypt, and then they crossed the Red Sea, and then they were in the wilderness, and God wanted to give them access to his presence, but he wanted to see how responsible are they. And he told Moses, put boundaries. They were like visual boundaries, so that no animal, no person can cross this boundary and come up the mountain. And if anybody crosses, they have to be put to death. God was trying their trust, their responsibility, to see how responsible are they. Can they be given the access? The Israelites failed this test. And after that moment, they decided they just understood that they don't want to pay the price, they don't want to show the responsibility of having access to God. So that after that, only Moses, and interestingly enough, Joshua was always with Moses up on the mountain. Read about it, but that's for a different day, a different subject. But only Moses had access on the mountain. Why? Because Moses proved responsible, faithful, if you wish, to the access that God gave him. God has boundaries. Actually, because God has boundaries, because he loves us, and because nothing sinful can live in the presence of a holy God, and because God is just. He is love. He is faithful. He is holy. Because of all of this, God is in the same time. Actually, he had to send his son because all the roads were closed towards God. But his son, and the sacrifice that Jesus did on the cross for us, build a bridge so that we could have access to the Father. If you want, he paid and he proved the responsibility so that we could have access. Because we're talking about responsibility and access in relationship. And maybe you receive, well, if you love me, then you are gonna be limitless. I received this. And maybe you're in a situation, well, if you want to be like Christ, you can't put boundaries. That's so false. Boundaries are for your own good. Your own and the person. If you think about it, if you want to be a free person, what do you have to do? You have to live in the circle of the boundaries put by society, right? You have to abide by the law if you want to be free. Otherwise, you're going to be a bound person. You're going to end up in prison. If you want to do whatever you want, that's going to come with some consequences. But if you want to be a free person, you have to listen to the law. You have to keep the speed limits. They're there for our safety. And many other laws that are put in there so that a society can function. It's the same with relationships. It's the same with life. I do recommend you the book Boundaries. I'm going to put a picture with it because I couldn't get it from my library. I'm going to put a picture with it on the screen so you can see it. It's an old book, but it's a very, very good book. I like it because it kind of brings you a little bit, it gives you a bit of insight in boundaries with family, boundaries with husbands and wife, boundaries with kids, boundaries with in-laws, boundaries with the enlarged family, boundaries at work, boundaries with God, boundaries with church, and so on and so forth. If we want to live free, we have to have healthy boundaries. For example, I'll give you an example. A boundary that I have in my marriage, Sam and I decided that this is a boundary, is that we never, and I mean I emphasize never, use the words never and always, in a sense of you never do this, you always do that. We decided that's not going to be part of our marriage. I talked in a different video a few years back, was in a year ago or so, about why is that important for us in our marriage. Now the boundaries with our kids. They do not walk in our bedroom without knocking and waiting for an answer. I don't walk on them because they're growing now, and Milo, for example, he started putting a boundary with me and his dad. He's asking us to leave the bathroom when he needs to go to the toilet, which is a healthy, normal boundaries as the child is growing. And we choose to respect it, of course, because we want a healthy relationship with our child. Good relationships, healthy relationships need healthy boundaries. And you know what? God is respecting our boundaries. The Bible says that, I think it's in Revelation where it talks about, I think it's Jesus that he's talking about, that he stays outside and he knocks at the door. And if you open, he'll come in it, he'll dine with you. He respects, he opened the bridge and he's waiting with arms wide open, but he's respecting your will, he's respecting your decision, he's respecting your boundaries. The devil is the one that does not respect. The devil is the one that walks in every open door that he finds. That's why it's so important that we do not leave open doors, that the devil can have free access. Be careful with open doors, left open doors. So forgiving does not mean to continue to tolerate the behavior, the sinful behavior. And again, it depends from situation to situation. Might be situations where you go and tell the person, look, that's what you're doing. You have a discussion. And I don't feel comfortable with this. It might not be something simple necessarily, but it might be something that is not healthy. And you say, look, this is my boundary. The person does not listen to you. Then you bring 2 or 3. The Bible gives us, read the Bible. It gives us all the tools in everything that we need. It doesn't tell us word by word for every situation, but it gives us the principles. And then the Bible tells us, and if the person does not listen, bring 2 or 3 witnesses with you. And then if he doesn't listen still, or she doesn't listen, then bring an authority. It talks about bringing the church, which represents an authority. Now, when we're talking about an abusive situation, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's sexual abuse, we do not stay in chit-chat. The importance in this situation, is to remove the victim to safety. This is not the situation where you stand. If somebody was to come, a woman was to come at me and say, my husband is beating me, or is beating my kids, or getting our life in danger, the first thing you have to do is get the victim out into safety. The same if somebody was to come, I'm sexually abused. That's not the situation to start going through all the process of the Bible. First thing you do, you remove the person. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in a different video. But what I want to say, keeping quiet is not helping the victim and is not helping the abuser. Choosing not to do anything is not doing any benefit to anybody. You're not loving the victim by keeping quiet because you're continuing to leave that victim in an abusive place. And you're not helping the abuser, covering the sin, perpetuating, letting him, contributing in a sense, sustaining him, even though it's from a passive point of view. You're not loving him. That's not love. That's not true biblical love. There needs to be a confrontation brought into light. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, if you who are listening to me are going through a situation that is hard, it doesn't have to be abuse. It doesn't have to be domestic violence. It can be something different. Don't be afraid to ask for help. We're going to talk in different videos, and I'm going to share a little bit more from my life and how all this abuse impacted me on the long run. And there were stages where I thought I was the only one. Because that's what the devil wants. He wants to keep you in a prison, chained to the person that hurt you and say you're the only one, only to you it happened. If you talk about it, it's so embarrassing and bringing shame. I fought with shame for a very long time. But I walked the process and I'm free to talk about it. This is what happened. I was molested as a child. I was molested as a teenager. I was emotionally, psychologically manipulated, and I was in a very toxic place. This is what happened. Some were my choices, some were choices made for me, some was because I just didn't know better. I took full responsibility of what it was. And that's how it is. And I'm not afraid or ashamed to talk about it anymore, but I was. Because that's what the devil wants, to bring and say, only you, to keep you closed in. The beauty thing is that since I started sharing a little bit my story here and there, privately, there are women and people that are coming and saying, Alex, I went through this and I went through that, and look, I went through that as well. People are starting to have courage to share with me because I have the courage to share. Look, you're not the only one that's happened to me. Even though I am a pastor's daughter, I lived in a beautiful family. This happened. In a beautiful village, this happened. There is hope. There is freedom. Those chains can get broken, as we talked in last video. That cell that you build around you can disappear. Actually, the last breath of Jesus on the cross was actually our first breath of hope. There is hope. I know it's a long process. I know it's not easy, but there is hope. Do not give up. Look for help. I would love to be able to help you. I do not have any professional training in this sense, so I can't be the guide necessarily that helps you move this to here. I'm hoping that through these videos, I'm sort of helping you a little bit, and maybe I don't fully know how to help you in figuring it all out, but at least a little bit to help you move up to here and realize that there are some details to that piece. I'm always here, ready to listen. I have my heart, I have my ears open, I have my heart to fill with you, I have a need to bow down and pray for you, I have a hug to give you if we ever meet physically. I'm here and I would love to hear you, so I would love you to have the courage to share, because I had the courage to share, to figure out that you're not alone. Do seek help. Look for good Christian counselors. If you actually know somebody from your region, whatever, just write the country, town you're in, if you will, and then the name of the good counselor that you know. I'm not sure if YouTube will let my comments. Lately, they've been set as comments off, although I put them as a setting that people are allowed to comment. But if they're not open, if they're open, I would love to see your references to good counselors. But if not, you can definitely write to me on Facebook or Instagram, and I would love together, even for the English-speaking community, just write the country you're from, because I don't know what country you're watching from. Maybe the town you're from, if it's a matter of town or region maybe. so that people can have a pinpoint of where to find help. We need to speak more open about it. And in Romania, it's still quite hard. People, Christians especially, it's like sin still a bit like taboo, needing a counselor. But we need, because God created us for relationships and we all have different giftings and the gifts are there to help the body of Christ. And counseling, it's an amazing, beautiful gift. You're actually resembling a bit the Holy Spirit because He's given to us as a counselor. So if you are watching, you're a counselor, hats off to you. You have a responsibility, amazing, big responsibility. But in the same time, what an honor to resemble the Holy Spirit. I love you guys and thank you for sticking around. I hope today's video got a little bit of light. I hope it encouraged you, or at least thank you for staying until the end, guys. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like, the bell button, because next week we're going to talk a little bit more about the healing process. Share the word if you think it would help anybody. Have a blessed time, a blessed week. Spend time with God, and there is hope. See you next time, guys. Bye.